It's been 3 weeks. 3 weeks since I sent the letter, and the silence is the loudest thing in this apartment. It doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like a morgue, sterile and cold. And I guess that makes me the medical examiner, standing over the corpse of what Beck and I used to have. The cause of death is obvious, at least to me. A single, self-inflicted wound, a letter. But what I can't wrap my head around is the why. Why that specific wound was fatal. I'm not even crying anymore. I think I'm past that. I'm in this weird, numb space, just replaying the events with a kind of detached curiosity. I keep checking my phone, but his name isn't there. I check my emails, my socials, the actual physical mailbox downstairs. Nothing. He didn't block me, he didn't yell. He just ceased to exist in my world. And that absence is his verdict. So no, I'm not here for sympathy or a "you'll find someone better." I'm here to conduct an autopsy. I need to lay all the organs out on the steel table and figure out which one of my stupid, arrogant cuts was the one that finally did it. The fatal one. Because I know I'm the killer. I just need to understand my own weapon. The weapon was a single sheet of cream-colored stationery, the expensive kind I bought for writing thank you notes after job interviews. It felt poetic at the time. A sick little irony that only I would appreciate, using something meant for gratitude to deliver a payload of manufactured indifference. Our breakup had been civilized. That's the word we used. It was a quiet, tearful conversation over the kitchen table where we both agreed we'd grown into different people. He'd packed a small bag, saying he'd get the rest of his things later, and left. It was sad, mature, and utterly devastating. For about a week, I allowed myself to grieve. I ate ice cream from the carton, cried through 3 seasons of a show we were supposed to watch together, and generally wallowed in the acceptable misery of a breakup. But then the loneliness started to curdle. It morphed into something uglier, something with teeth, wounded pride. My ego, it turns out, is a particularly nasty little gremlin. It couldn't accept a peaceful end. It needed to win. It whispered to me in the dead of night, while I was staring at the empty space on his side of the bed, that Beck was probably fine. It painted vivid pictures of him at a bar with his friends, laughing, relieved, already swiping through dating apps. While I was sitting here, a pathetic cliché rewatching his favorite movies, he was thriving. The thought was unbearable. It felt like a personal failure, so I decided to write him a letter. A closure letter, I told myself, a final, kind goodbye. But it was a declaration of war disguised as a peace treaty. I remember the whole ritual. I poured a glass of Merlot, the one he always said was too bitter, and sat at my desk. The city lights twinkled outside, oblivious. I wasn't just writing, I was composing. I was an artist of spite. Every sentence was meticulously crafted for maximum impact. I wrote about Owen. Owen, a completely fictional person, a composite of everything I knew Beck felt insecure about. Owen, the senior data scientist at a hot new tech firm. Beck was a junior programmer at a company he felt was stagnating. Owen, who found my ambition inspiring, not intimidating. A direct quote from a fight we'd had months ago. I described our fake dates in excruciating detail, twisting the knife with memories that were exclusively ours. We went to that little Italian place, Valenti's, the one Beck and I had a reservation for on our 3rd anniversary. The one we had to cancel because his mom got sick. In my letter, Owen took me there spontaneously. He just knew, I wrote, implying a level of intuitive connection Beck had lacked. We hiked the trail to Eagle Peak, the one he'd spent weeks mapping out for us for a fall camping trip. With Owen, the weather was perfect, the view life-changing. I described Owen holding my hand in a way that felt so certain, a direct jab at Beck's quiet anxieties about our future, his cautious, methodical nature that I had once found endearing and now framed as a weakness. Every word was a scalpel, designed to cut deep into his most private insecurities. I reread it, the wine buzzing in my head, feeling a sick, heady sense of satisfaction. It was perfect. It wasn't angry or desperate. It was breezy, happy, and utterly dismissive. It was the letter of a woman who had not only moved on but had upgraded. I painted a picture of a life that was so much better without him, and I made sure he knew he was the reason it was better now. I folded it, sealed it in an envelope addressed in my neatest cursive, and dropped it in the mail the next morning with the triumphant finality of a general launching a perfectly calculated strike. I was so sure of my strategy, so confident in my own cleverness. I had no idea I was just a fool holding a live grenade, pulling the pin with a self-satisfied smirk. To understand why that letter was a kill shot and not just a flesh wound, you have to understand Beck. He wasn't complicated, not in the way I am. He was built on a foundation of a few very simple, very rigid principles. Honesty was his bedrock. Respect was the air he breathed. For him, there were no shades of gray in these matters. You were either honest or you were a liar. You were either respectful or you were cruel. I remember this one time, early in our relationship, we were watching a movie where the main character pulls some elaborate, manipulative prank on her ex to make him jealous. I was laughing, saying how clever it was. Beck just got quiet. He turned to me, his face completely serious, and said, "I don't get it. Why would you ever use someone's feelings as a game? It's the ugliest thing a person can do." I brushed it off at the time, thought he was being a little dramatic, a bit too much of a Boy Scout. Now I see it for what it was. A warning label I chose to ignore. His aversion to deception was rooted deeper than just a moral preference. It was a trauma response. He told me, one night after we'd both had too much wine, about his parents' divorce. His dad hadn't just cheated on his mom, he had constructed an entire alternate reality. A second phone, a fake work trip, lies layered on top of lies until the truth came out and shattered everything. Beck was 15. He said the worst part wasn't the affair itself, but the deliberate, calculated deception. The way his father had looked him in the eye and lied, turning their entire family life into a work of fiction. "I can forgive almost anything," he'd told me that night, his voice low and heavy with a pain that was clearly still raw. "Stupidity, mistakes, even anger. But I can't forgive someone lying just to hurt me. I can't forgive manipulation. It makes my skin crawl." And what was my letter, if not the pinnacle of manipulative, calculated deception? I didn't just lie. I weaponized our shared memories. I took his deepest insecurities, the ones he had trusted me with in moments of vulnerability, and I fashioned them into bullets. I aimed them at the 15-year-old boy still grieving his family's implosion. My letter wasn't just a childish taunt to an ex-boyfriend. It was a precise, targeted attack on the very foundation of who he was. I hadn't just crossed his red line. I had taken a can of gasoline and a match to it, burning it so completely that there was nothing left but ash. After the letter was sent, a strange sense of giddy, vindictive anticipation settled over me. I felt like a movie villain who had just set the timer on a bomb, leaning back against a wall with a cool, detached smile. I spent the first couple of days glued to my phone, waiting for the explosion. My imagination ran wild with scenarios. I pictured him getting the mail, casually flipping through bills and junk mail until he saw my handwriting. His casual curiosity would turn to shock, then to a deep, gut-wrenching regret as he read my breezy, cruel words. I imagined his call, his voice thick with an emotion I could label as pain, asking me who Owen was, telling me he'd made a terrible mistake. I had entire conversations scripted in my head, dialogues where I would be magnanimous in my victory, calmly explaining that he'd had his chance and I was happy now. I was in control. Day one passed. Nothing. Mail can be slow, I told myself, a little knot of impatience tightening in my stomach. I even checked the USPS website for delivery delays in his zip code. Normal, day two, still nothing. The giddiness began to morph into a low-grade confusion. This wasn't part of the script. Maybe he was trying to play it cool? Yes, that had to be it. He was wounded, of course, but he was trying not to give me the satisfaction of a reaction. The thought made me smirk. It was a tactical delay. Two could play at that game. I made a point of posting a picture on my Instagram story, just a glass of wine at a bar, captioned "Wednesday Vibes." It was a calculated breadcrumb, a hint of my fabulous new single life. By day three, the silence was no longer a strategy. It was a presence. It was a heavy blanket smothering the apartment, absorbing all sound. I started noticing other, smaller silences, like cracks spreading from a central point of impact. Our mutual friends, who had been sending me the usual "thinking of you" and hanging their texts, went quiet. A group chat we were both in, usually buzzing with memes and weekend plans, fell completely dormant. I sent a funny video to Amelia, my closest friend in our shared circle, and got a single haha back hours later. No commentary, no follow-up questions. It was the digital equivalent of a polite, tight-lipped smile. That's when the real panic started to creep in, cold and slithering. I opened my messaging app, my thumb hovering over his name. The last message was a logistical one from a week ago about the electricity bill. My fingers felt clumsy as I typed out a casual, "Hey, hope you're doing okay." It felt pathetic, even to me. I hit send, one gray checkmark, delivered, not blocked. The relief was immediate but short-lived. The second checkmark, the one that meant read, never appeared. Hours turned into a day, then two. The single gray checkmark mocked me. It was somehow infinitely worse than being blocked. Blocking is an act of passion, of anger. It's a slammed door, a final, dramatic punctuation mark. This was nothing. It was a void. It was the digital equivalent of him seeing my call, looking at the screen with my name and picture, and then deliberately setting his phone face down on a table and walking out of the room. His social media was a ghost town. No new posts, no new stories, no new profile picture. It was as if on the day the letter arrived, he had simply been unplugged from the world. He hadn't reacted. He had evaporated. He had taken my perfectly crafted bomb, my meticulously planned declaration of war, and disposed of it not by fighting back, but by simply moving to a different universe where my pathetic explosions couldn't reach him. The silence wasn't his shield, it was his response. It was his final, crushing judgment, and it was deafening. The panic finally crested into a full-blown tidal wave by the end of the first week. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. The silence wasn't just an absence of sound. It was an active, suffocating force that pressed in on me from all sides. I was pacing the length of my apartment, from the window overlooking the street where I half expected to see his car, to the front door I prayed would rattle with his key. I broke. I called Amelia, and the moment I heard her voice, the dam of my composure shattered. I just started sobbing, a messy, incoherent stream of "I don't understand," and "he's just disappeared," and "why won't he just talk to me?" She let me cry for a full minute, the sound echoing in the sterile quiet of my apartment. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't soft or comforting. It was tired. It was the voice of someone who has been a reluctant audience member to a drama for too long and just wants the curtain to fall. "Kaya," she said, her tone utterly flat, "what exactly did you expect?" Her lack of immediate sympathy was a slap in the face. It was so jarring it stopped my tears mid-sob. "I don't know," I wailed, the frustration making my voice shrill. "A text, an angry call, for him to be heard at least, to fight for me. Not this. This nothing." There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her choosing her words, weighing them. "He called me, you know," she said quietly. "The day he got your letter. He sounded, hollowed out. He didn't read it to me, he wouldn't. He has too much class for that, but I could hear the effect of it in his voice. He just said, 'She sent me something. I think it was designed to hurt me as much as possible. It worked, so I'm done.'" The words hung in the air between us, cold and final. "What do you mean, done?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The word felt too simple, too small for the chasm that had opened up in my life. "Done," Amelia repeated, and this time there was a sharp, undeniable edge to it, the sound of a friend whose patience had finally snapped. "As in, the end. Finito. No more conversations, no more drama, no more late-night calls. He packed up the rest of his stuff from your place while you were at work the next day. He said he was putting everything you two had in a box and putting it in storage. Mentally, I mean. Kaya, what did you want from him? A screaming match in the street. Did you want him to beg for you back so you could have the satisfaction of saying no? You wrote him a letter telling him you'd already replaced him with a better model. He believed you. A person like Beck, a man whose entire world is built on honesty, he doesn't play those games. You showed him the door, and he had the self-respect to walk through it. Her words weren't a comfort. They were the tools for this autopsy, sharp and precise, cutting through the thick layers of my self-delusion. "You didn't win, Kaya," she said, her voice softening just a little, but it was with pity, not empathy, and that felt so much worse. "You just confirmed every single fear he ever had about being manipulated and played. You took a good man who loved you, even after you broke up, and you decided to humiliate him for sport. His silence? That's not him being weak. That's the most mature, dignified response he could possibly give to something so childish. He's refusing to be a character in your little revenge fantasy. He's just leaving the stage." I was still reeling from Amelia's words, the phrase, leaving the stage, echoing in my head, when the final, fatal blow landed. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost accidental, delivered with the casual innocence of a bystander who has no idea they're handing you a loaded gun. Amelia must have sensed she'd been too harsh, because her voice softened into something closer to her usual self. Look, Kaya, he was hurting too. It wasn't all on you. He wasn't perfect. I clung to that tiny life raft of validation. See, he was already pulling away, I said, a pathetic attempt to rewrite the narrative. He was probably already over it. No, Amelia said, and her voice was firm again, cutting off my excuse. That's not true at all. In fact, maybe I shouldn't be telling you this. Tell me, I pleaded, my heart hammering against my ribs. Please, Amelia. She sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. He came over the night before you sent that letter. He was a mess. He sat on my couch and just talked for hours. He blamed himself for the breakup, said he'd been too rigid, too focused on work, that he hadn't made you feel cherished. He was mapping out all the ways he'd been a bad partner. She paused, and I held my breath. He said he was going to give it a week or two, let you have your space, let things cool down. And then, she said, her voice dropping, he was going to call you. He wanted to ask if you'd be willing to try again, to go to counseling, to really work on it. He still loved you, Kaya. He thought your relationship was worth saving. The phone felt slick in my hand. My vision tunneled. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. The night before. While I was sitting at my desk, swirling my wine and sharpening my verbal knives, feeling so clever and powerful, Beck was on Amelia's couch, tearing himself apart with guilt. While I was meticulously crafting a fiction designed to destroy his self-esteem, he was planning a path to reconciliation. My letter hadn't been a counterattack in a war. It had been an ambush on a man walking toward me with a white flag. I hadn't just killed a relationship that was already over. I had executed one that was on life support, with a doctor rushing down the hall with the defibrillator paddles. That was the fatal wound, the one I could never take back. I hadn't just burned a bridge, I had blown up the entire coastline while his rescue boat was approaching the shore. So the autopsy is complete. I'm back where I started, sitting in the morgue of our apartment, but the numbness is gone. It's been replaced by this horrifying, crystal-clear understanding. The cause of death wasn't the breakup. It was me, specifically my pathetic, arrogant need to win a situation that was never a contest. The report is written in my head. Victim, Beck. Time of death, approximately 10:45 a.m., Tuesday, 3 weeks ago, upon receiving a letter. Cause of death, a fatal, targeted strike to his core principles, administered by the one person he had trusted with that knowledge. Pre-existing conditions, a deep-seated trauma related to deception, which made the attack exponentially more lethal. I have the draft of that letter on my laptop. I open it sometimes, reading the words I wrote. Owen finds my ambition inspiring. It felt so certain. They look like a foreign language now, the scribblings of a lunatic. Then I'll switch to our old messages, scrolling back months, years, back to the beginning. Back to his goofy jokes and his good morning, beautiful texts. My mind is a pendulum, swinging violently between two poles. 1 second, I'm filled with a searing rage. He's so fragile, I think. He couldn't even handle a stupid, petty letter. He should have fought. The next, the pendulum swings back, and I'm drowning in a wave of self-loathing so intense it makes me feel sick. My God, the other voice whispers. What kind of monster are you? There is no peace here. There's no closure. The autopsy didn't provide any answers that could lead to healing. It just confirmed the diagnosis. I'm the disease. And I'm trapped in this silent, sterile room I created for myself, forever re-examining the corpse, knowing I can never, ever bring it back to life.